morning, everybody. I want to welcome the parties and any members of the public to this hearing. This is a hearing that's captioned Petition of Margaret McCarthy, docket number INS 13-038-AP. I'm Roger Savini, and I'm the hearing officer today. With us are Sarah Prescott, the hearings clerk, will be marking the exhibits.
Right here.
Cara Dolcino, who's my general counsel and advisor. Deb O'Loughlin, who is assisting Sarah. The petitioner, Margaret McCarthy, and her counsel, Jeremy Eggleton. And there may be other attorneys here, Attorney Eggleton with you, Attorney Castaldo, or
nobody else is here.
No one else is here, okay, thank you. Richard McCaffrey, representing the department as the staff advocate, together with James Fox and Alex Felvable. Are you here?
Alex is testifying and has been sequestered.
Okay.
And Carolyn Peterson, Commissioner, is assisting me this morning.
And Carolyn Peterson,
yes.
Thank you. Intervenor, Anthem Blue Cross Blue Shield, and Maria Prue, who's an Anthem Associate General Counsel, and Attorney Michael Durham, who is here as well, representing Anthem. To create a record of this hearing, we have with us a stenographer, Susan Robidas, who is going to record the hearing today. I want to remind everybody, and the attorneys and the witnesses, to please speak clearly. Don't rely on the nod of a head or the shake of the head in response to questions, but clearly answer yes or no. For everyone's comfort, I'm going to try to take a few breaks throughout the hearing to let people stretch their legs. Restrooms are located near the front entrance to the right. And there are also vending machines, I'm told, if you go to the left. Let me address decorum just a little bit. I expect everyone in attendance to conduct themselves with due respect for the hearing process. And I want to remind everybody that this hearing is not a forum for grandstanding. Everyone is going to be accorded due respect, including respect for the time of all of us that are involved in this hearing. Welcome members of the press to this hearing, but ask that they take particular care not to disturb those in attendance. Any conversations or interviews must be conducted outside the hearing room and well away from the doorway to this room. This applies actually to anyone in attendance. Also, please silence any cell phones. This is a great time to do it. This reminds me, it's in writing, so it reminds me to do it as well. The rules that govern this hearing are found in INS 200. Council should reference any relevant provision of INS 200 during the hearing as necessary. The burden of proof. The petitioner has the burden of proof in this hearing. She must present evidence that proves by a preponderance of this evidence that the Anthem Pathways network used for plans offered on the exchange cannot meet the network adequacy standards without the inclusion of Frisbie Hospital and its providers. Because the petitioner has the burden of proof, she will present her case first. The department and Anthem both may cross-examine any witnesses and object to any evidence presented by the petitioner. After the petitioner has presented her case, the department will then present its evidence and witnesses, followed by Anthem. To help ensure that all parties are going to have enough time to present their evidence before the end of the day, I will not take opening statements. If we have time after all the evidence is submitted, I'll take closing statements. If there is not sufficient time for closing statements, I'll take closing statements, written closing statements. The scope of this hearing. This hearing addresses a narrow issue: whether the Anthem network is inadequate because it does not include Frisbie Hospital providers. I've issued an order that addresses what evidence is going to be presented today. The petitioner can present any evidence that she believes shows that there are deficiencies in the network in Stratford County that would not exist if Frisbie had been included in the Anthem network. Evidence related to alleged network deficiencies in other counties is not relevant because it's not going to help me determine if Frisbie must be included in the Anthem network. Therefore, that sort of evidence is not going to be permitted. Witnesses and exhibits. The rules of evidence do not apply in this hearing. However, I will exclude irrelevant, immaterial, or unduly repetitious evidence. Objections can be raised as to the relevance or credibility of evidence that's going to be presented. For example, a witness who does not have personal knowledge of a matter is not a credible witness as to that matter, and such testimony will not be permitted. I will accept oral offers of proof as necessary to determine whether the evidence is credible or relevant. Please keep these short and to the point, and I may ask you to reduce them to writing instead of giving them orally. If evidence is excluded, you may file a written offer of proof for the record, but I really don't want to waste time with lengthy offers of proof on matters that are not relevant to this hearing. I will not consider any evidence or testimony offered outside this hearing, only the evidence or testimony that's presented here today, or for which I will take official notice. I want to state for the record that I'm taking official notice of the proceedings in docket INS 13-038-AR. This is docket INS 13-038-AP, and all pleadings and orders filed in this prior proceeding for purposes of establishing a comprehensive official record. Of course, any exhibits or attachments to these pleadings will not be considered evidence unless they're introduced as evidence in this hearing. At the end of today's hearing, what I anticipate is that I will not close the hearing, but will keep the record open for the submission of any written offers of proof or any supplements to filed findings of fact and rulings of law, or any other information that I may allow to be submitted. However, you've all represented to me that that you believe the hearing can be concluded today, and I would appreciate your efforts to keeping the testimony moving along without delay. Are there any other matters that need to be addressed at the outset? Yes.
Briefly, I just want to clarify that the last point that you made about keeping the hearing open, we won't be obviously needing to submit any additional evidence or anything like that, but I want to make sure that included the ability to submit a post-trial memorandum.
Yes.
Okay. And then I have prepared an objection to the burden of proof that I was going to ask to read orally into the record, but if you prefer to have that in writing after the hearing, that's fine too. I understand that you're proceeding on the record.
That would be my preference, is to have it in writing so that I can have it as my record and refer to it as I need.
And then I think all the parties had some discussions yesterday by electronic mail about the relevancy of certain exhibits that the petitioner wants to put into evidence based upon your motion to eliminate. If it makes sense for the parties, perhaps we could go through our proposed exhibits and just decide whether or not they're admissible in the first instance, get that out of the way, and then I would put my client on the stand.
Does everyone have your exhibits?
I can go through them one at a time and send them out. They have copies of all the exhibits, or at least they have notice of all the exhibits prior to this hearing, and it was on the basis of that notice and those exhibits that we exchanged our debate.
Just from the department's perspective, I think we do object to certain exhibits, and it might be for time's sake, since we are in essence moving into object to some of the petitioner's exhibits, that we could go through our objection, and then the petitioner could respond to it, as opposed to going through the exhibits, just to tell you what just to tell you generally what they are.
If I might, Mr. Hearing Officer, I think that there are no objections to the exhibits that are being offered by the department through Mr. McCaffrey.
If you've narrowed the issues and want to point those issues out to me, let me tell you that I'm inclined to accept the exhibits as an offer of proof without ruling on their relevance at this point, but.
So do you want to hear argument about the objections or not? I'm just trying to,
You
if you want to accept them as an offer of proof and rule them later, but. do you
That's,
want us
I certainly, for the record, if you'd like to present them.
I think the department would like to just kind of go through its view of your latest order, which I think would help all the parties. I'm sure the petitioner has maybe a slightly different view of the order to give all the parties a general view of the scope of today's hearings in terms of relevancy under INS 200. But if that's okay with that.
That's fine.
Okay, so, you know, I guess yeah. Slow down. I always can't slow down. So I guess there are really two relevant orders that we have here. We have the March 28th order, and then we have yesterday's May 13th order. And the issue, as far as the department sees it, is we have, particularly the last sentence of your order, in which you state evidence as to violations in other counties, violations that impact other consumers, so other counties, other consumers, are not relevant in this context and shall not be permitted. And as you know, under 203.01D, I believe it's 4, the department is only allowed to admit relevant evidence and material evidence that is, really repetitious. So, stepping back, the department sees really that there are two issues. There's the county of Stratford, and then there's the actual consumer, Ms. McCarthy. And then that, in terms of adequacy, network adequacy, the lens for that is 2701.06, particularly the geographic access standards. And therefore, there's other issue that I know is the petitioner, I think, intends to present, which is unnamed individuals in the northern part of Stratford County. And so we think that under your order, since you're not going to hear, you don't want to hear evidence of other counties and particularly other consumers, violations as to other consumers, these unnamed individuals in the northern county, evidence as to those individuals shouldn't be permitted. And I think the concern from the department's perspective, and also perhaps Anthem, I'll let them speak for themselves, is that if you allow the evidence of the unnamed people in the northern part of the county, then you're going to have to expand your order as to other counties, because you're then going to have the, as you know, it's a distance and time issue as far as geographical access, and then you'd have to reach into all the surrounding counties. For example, in Carroll County, there's a Huggins Hospital, so you just have to start reviewing Huggins Hospital's providers that are in Carroll County that the people in the northern part of Stratford County could avail themselves of to determine whether the network is adequate under 2701.06. So we think that there should be documents exhibits 2 through 7 should be redacted. I believe this could be done after either. And what we feel it should be that the issue is really 3 issues. One is the actual Mrs. McCarthy and where she is and network adequacy in Stratford County for her, and then through the lens, which I think probably is one of the most important parts here, of 2701.06, because that's the focus. That was the focus of the department's orders. So, and review. So I think that's the first issue, and I don't know if Mrs. McCarthy would like to speak to those, because I think some of the other ones have some slightly different objections.
Yes, I do just want to clarify that it's not our intention to submit evidence about individuals who are not here today. The kind of evidence that we would like to submit concerning the northern portion of Stratford County is evidence pertaining to, for example, population size of the towns in northern Stratford County, which I almost think the commissioner could take judicial notice of. The average income levels in each town, average unemployment levels in each town, and all of which is founded upon reports by sister agencies of the insurance department. So we would use an exhibit from the Office of Energy and Planning to establish what the population levels are in a town, for example. And in addition, we have a state health profile as Exhibit 12 that was prepared by the Department of Health and Human Services that draws correlations between levels of income and unemployment and pre-existing conditions, health outcomes, and insurability. Those are the kinds of things that we would seek to put into evidence to establish, as you put it in the motion in limine, Commissioner, whether deficiencies existing in Stratford County, the entire county, can only be addressed if Frisbie is included in the Anthem network. So we believe that that is consistent with the burden of proof that you have set forth in this motion in limine. So again, we're not seeking to talk about individuals who might not have access in Farmington, for instance. We want to talk about the demographics of Farmington in relation to the geographic access standards set forth in 2701.06.
And the department's position as to the sister agency materials is that is irrelevant and should be excluded on several grounds. The first ground is, this is about the kind of social and economic demographics if you look at their findings and rulings, and therefore I guess they're trying to argue that more people in certain areas of the state need more coverage and where like hot spots are. So I think then if you wanted to get into that, the first thing you need to have an expert. Because if you just take a look at the raw data from, say, employment security about a community profile, you would then have to, for purposes of the issue of that they're trying to show that there would be more people there, I think, trying to access the network, you first have to show how many people are currently on Medicaid, how many people are going to be on expanded Medicaid, how many people are going to be on EPSDT, which is a Medicaid program. Then after that, you have to determine how many people would decide to pay the tax rather than pay the premium if there were a premium, or go through the process of getting a subsidy, and how many people would actually avail of themselves of the system. And I think in the first instance, even if you wanted to let that in, you'd have to do that through an expert. You could just have attorneys discuss it. And then, but the more important issue is I think we're then getting into the public policy thing that goes beyond 270106, which isn't like capacity focused. It's that there's an enrolled population and that there are certain providers within a certain distance of that enrolled population. It doesn't get into the issue of, well, if the enrolled population is above this certain number, then you have to all of a sudden have, twice as many providers, all of that stuff. So in essence, basically, once again, going beyond what 270106 requires to basically what's a new standard, basically, which would be an argument that 270106 was in essence inappropriate. And I think if you start getting into those issues, then that isn't an issue that a commissioner should be in essence overruling rules that were passed through joint GELCAR rules that the legislature participated in, and coming up with new rules. So I think the exhibits, I believe, would be 8, 9, and 12. They should be out on relevancy grounds that even if they're generally not relevant because they go past the requirements of 270106, and even if they didn't go past the requirements of 270106.
Sir, even if they didn't go back.
Even if they didn't go past the relevant 270106, you would need experts to interpret that information, and without those experts, it's completely irrelevant to the task here. And I think also, lastly, that if you start getting into that, you once again getting back to, which is the issue as far as the motion to eliminate, the issue of the Boston and Maine case and this ability to have a broad sweeping remedy, and also then the citizen suit issue that in essence without Ms. McCarthy's not addressing her issue and her injury, she's addressing the injuries of this unnamed population in other parts of the county. I don't think that's appropriate for her here to do. And I'm sorry, Anthem mentioned this. They should be.
Mr. Hearing Officer, may I just also join this discussion? I would simply go back on all of these issues to your March 28th, 2014 order and notice of hearing, and then your order of yesterday on the motion in limine. And based on the March 28th order, the original decision from December of 2013, which denied Ms. McCarthy standing, was reversed in a very limited way. It stayed in place except for Ms. McCarthy as a consumer who was alleging injury from the department's decision had the right to put on evidence to show that there were deficiencies in the Anthem network. Obviously, we disagree with that, but she alleges that there were deficiencies in Stratford County that if Frisbie had been part of the network, would resolve those deficiencies. That's the limited basis for her standing. Then you come forward to your motion in limine order yesterday, and you make it quite clear that this hearing is about one petitioner, one person. She's not representing anyone else. Ms. McCarthy has a right to put on her evidence on behalf of herself. And the order says at the end that evidence as to violations in other counties and violations that impact other consumers are not relevant and shall not be permitted. Ms. McCarthy's attorney says he's not going to make reference to any other unnamed individuals, and certainly he wouldn't be entitled to do that. But that's in essence what he's doing by attempting to put evidence on about other places, other reaches in Stratford County that are irrelevant to Ms. McCarthy's residents and providers that she seeks treatment from. So I think that under your original order and your order yesterday limiting what the evidence is going to be, the only evidence that's probative and relevant to what the issue is has to be tied not only to deficiencies in Stratford County, but they have to be tied to Ms. McCarthy. The exhibits that we're talking about now are not tied to Ms. McCarthy. They are about, in fact, unnamed people that live elsewhere.
That's what I was trying to say, just not that eloquently. So.
Turning to the standard in question, it requires that Anthem create a network that provides for at least 2 open panel providers, those accepting new patients, within 15 miles of 90% of the population. I think that the population figures for the towns in Stratford County are relevant to that analysis. I don't think that we need an expert to put in evidence concerning what the population of the town of Milton is. I think that we can get that and trust that the Office of Energy and Planning or the Office of Employment and Security has that one nailed down. So I believe that that evidence should be admitted, and it goes to the question of whether Anthem has met that standard of ensuring that at least 90% of the population in Stratford County has access within 15 miles to 2 open panel providers.
Once again, on matters of this nature, you're really going to have to help me think through how I'm going to think when I'm back by myself with no other information available to me, and why I should agree with your way of thinking. So I just want to make sure that I say that, and I may say it again during the course of this hearing, because as you know, that's what I'm going to do. I'm inclined to, this has come to me at a very late hour, for example, to accept it as an offer of proof and not to rule on it until I take a look at it again in the privacy of looking at the evidence that's presented.
So maybe we'll consider the exhibits admitted for identification purposes. We'll make our arguments based upon that, and then as part of our post-trial memoranda, we can exchange memoranda concerning the relevancy of the exhibits in question. Would that make sense?
Well, again, I'm not necessarily allowing it as evidence. In other words, you may make arguments using that as your evidence that I may not allow, because for whatever the reason, I don't want to give you a blanket.
I understand.
I want to make sure that what you present is in fact what is going to help Ms. McCarthy meet her burden of proof.
we have just one more thing we like say, as far as Exhibit 10 goes, which is the complete right to know request. I think that goes beyond the issue of relevant, completely considers the complete department's response to the right to know request. And I know that Ms. McCarthy's attorney stated that he wanted to use it for rebuttal purposes, and I think that really shouldn't be an exhibit until he would need to use it for rebuttal. If someone says something, then he can use it to rebut with, but it wouldn't be an exhibit in the first instance.
I'm fine with that approach, Commissioner.
Now, we just didn't get a chance to talk about that before.
Good, is that all in this matter?
Just to finish on that point,
Sure.
Mr. Hearing Officer, is that Anthem has no objection to the Ms. McCarthy's exhibits being marked for identification, with the understanding, as you've indicated, that they are not full exhibits or in evidence, and obviously to the extent they're not in full exhibits, I'm assuming there's not going to be any attempt to ask questions of witnesses based on those exhibits.
Provided that the only objection is to the relevancy, to the extent that there's an objection as to credibility of the documents themselves, then I would like to provide a foundation. But if the only argument is this isn't relevant, then I have no problem making the argument in a post-trial memoranda, and then you can decide whether the document is relevant or not, and then make determinations on my argument based upon that decision.
Just so I'm clear, by foundational argument, you're talking about just authenticity and hearsay that the document is what it purports to be, but not necessarily, but not with, and just to that extent.
Yes, that's correct.
Anything else on this matter?
I just want to return very quickly, Mr. Hearing Officer, is that I started out by indicating that I don't believe that there's any objection to Anthem's exhibits or the department's exhibits actually becoming full exhibits, and I would ask that we be permitted to do that. I have Anthem's 2 exhibits that I would present to the hearing officer if you prefer. Counsel already have copies, but I think we can get the exhibits that there are no objections to made as full exhibits.
Because I had to say that there are no objections. That's fine.
Commissioner's position, Commissioner, we introduce them right now and just provide copies to you.
Sure.
I gave Carolyn an assignment. My paralegal is going to distribute these for me, so I'll do my best. There is we'll be examining, there is a copy for you, Commissioner. There is a marking copy for you. And I think this is I think I just have one for you folks, okay? This is Exhibit A. A1 is a spreadsheet. This
Could
is
you just keep your
for
voice up,
marking.
please? Could you just keep your voice up, please?
Yes.
A1 is a spreadsheet.
Exhibit A is the Anthem Network Adequacy Submission of May 14th, 2014. Exhibit A1 is a spreadsheet showing the Stratford County provider list for Anthem's Pathway Network. Exhibit B is Anthem Blue Cross Blue Shield's network adequacy submission of June 24, 2013, and this has been marked as, I say, B. Exhibit B1 is a spreadsheet, part of the Anthem Pathway Network filing of June 24, 2013, and it shows the Stratford County provider list for the Pathway Network. Now, when I was in law school, a very famous professor said to a muttering law student, "Sir, lawyers are paid by the heard word." So I forgot what Professor Summers said, and I'm sorry about that. Commissioner, I'm introducing now a packet that shows exhibits C through G. I'll describe these in just a moment after I've distributed these. Exhibit, there's an index. Exhibit C is an affidavit of Margaret McCarthy dated December 3rd, 2013. Exhibit D is Mrs. McCarthy's affidavit of April 15th, 2014. Exhibit E is an affidavit of Robert Benedetto dated March 11th, 2014. Exhibit F is NHID Bulletin docket number INS 13-007-AB, and Exhibit G is a National Committee for Quality Assurance Accreditation certificate. Commissioner, we will have one additional exhibit, a map of, Department of Transportation map of Stratford County that we haven't enlarged, and we'll introduce it a little later in the proceedings. But that's it.
Commissioner, also on behalf of Anthem, the two exhibits that I mentioned that are in agreement to go in. Anthem Exhibit 1 is the affidavit of Robert Noonan, and Exhibit 2 is the an affidavit from Margaret McCarthy that was signed on April 15th, 2014. Thank you.
I knew I was in trouble trying to distribute those exhibits without having Carolyn Peterson here with me. Commissioner, I inadvertently distributed Anthem's copy of the exhibits to the clerk, Sarah Prescott.
You need it back?
That would be helpful.
Which one does he want? Which one does he
The
want?
third set, Debbie.
Oh,
You have two, the
I
commissioner.
gave the commissioner one, Kiara has one, we have these as official exhibits.
Well,
So you need these.
You can share.
Thanks. Carolyn, I'll never do it again.
Oh, that's her exhibit.
Okay.
So, plaintiff's
Get- Excuse me, keep your voice up, please.
petitioner's Exhibit 1, dates stamped 2 through 3 is a statement concerning the network adequacy process.
you have any extras?
I do.
Can you bring up another set, so we have one for the commissioner and then one for us as exhibit? Yeah.
I'm happy to.
No.
I'm happy to put that together in a second. And I can
Okay,
do
yeah,
now.
well, go ahead.
This is a redacted provider listing for Stratford.
Exhibit 2?
Exhibit 2.
This will be two.
Excuse me, what is it?
Exhibit F, yeah, I just put that. That's exhibit 2, the first provider list.
No problem. Mr. Hearing Officer, just with regard to McCarthy's exhibit number 2, which is a provider list, council before we went on the record agreed that originally that exhibit was going to be the entire provider list, which is huge for the state. And we've agreed that what's marked right now for identification is the list of providers in Stratford County, but the department was kind enough to indicate they could run us a version that would include providers for Stratford, Belknap, and Carroll counties, which we will eventually, I think, agree can be a full exhibit. But that's just, we're going to have to do that at a later time.
That's fine.
Although we do have those.
Oh, you do?
Let's finish with the Anthem's exhibit.
Do you want to
and then we'll
substitute
do
that?
those.
Why don't we put them both in, and then we can.
Okay. We'll have to change the numbers on just record those on. Yeah, GM.
So go ahead.
Petitioner's Exhibit 3.
Yeah,
Really?
speak up.
Petitioner's Exhibit 3 is the managed geo access report for primary care providers. Petitioner's Exhibit 4 is a listing of federal essential community providers. Petitioner's Exhibit 5 is also a listing of federal essential community providers.
I'm sorry, is there a listing of, I'm sorry, I'm getting a little kind of cross-talking here.
Federal
Thank you.
essential community providers.
Thank you.
Petitioner 6 is a network adequacy comparison chart. Petitioner's Exhibit 7 is another provider list, and Mr. Durham's, Anthem's objection applies also to this list. Petitioner's 8 are population estimates for New Hampshire cities and towns in Westchester County. Petitioner's 9 is demographic information for cities and towns in Stratford County. Petitioner's 11 is a newspaper article from Boston.
11. There is no 10?
10 is the body of the materials that were disclosed under our RSA 91A request. Petitioner's 12 is the New Hampshire State Health Profile submitted, prepared by the Department of Health and Human Services. Petitioner's 13 is a list of physician practices affiliated with Frisbie Memorial Hospital in a pay or mix for select practices amongst them.
So if we can have a duplicate set, that would be great.
We're in agreement that what you've just identified.
I'm sorry, could you keep your voice up, please?
Yes, we're in agreement that what you've just marked as 1 through 13 are for identification only.
That's correct, yeah.
I guess, Jeremy, you provided us with electronic copies of these, but you didn't bring hard copies of them?
I did bring them.
Oh, you did today? Okay.
I'm happy to put them together for you. Okay, just,
At some point, thanks.
I do need to provide some for the commissioner.
Give me one set.
Yep.
Just distribute them to the
Is that going to be an official exhibit?
That's 6. 7.
we're providing additional spreadsheets as per agreement of the parties. They are being marked NHID Exhibit A2 and B2. And these are spreadsheets, and these reflect the Anthem Pathway Network for the counties of Stratford, Carroll, and Belknap County, and it's with respect to the Pathway Network providers in those 3 counties. And these are all coming in as full exhibits.
And which exhibit is this?
We've just added
As A2
A2 and B2.
and B2.
And those are the exhibits, just so I understand it, that I guess Attorney Durham alluded to with regard to the 3 counties just a minute ago,
Correct, that's correct.
and that Attorney Eglinton agreed that that's
Exactly.
what
Our
represented.
exhibits 2 and 7 are provider lists, and those 2 exhibits that were just submitted as A2 and B2 are essentially replacements for those.
Okay.
And we
All right.
agree that these A2 and B2 can be full exhibits.
Okay.
And I have hard copies for the parties. They already have electronic copies. I can share them afterwards. I'm not going to be relying on these documents as part of the testimonial aspect.
Could I just remind you all just to keep your voices up, please?
Good. I think we're at a place where we can start.
Thank you,
With that,
Commissioner.
I'll turn it over to you, Attorney Eglinton.
I would like to call Mrs. McCarthy to the witness stand, please. So please take a seat right there before you sit down. Where would you like me to stand, Commissioner, in terms of my questions of Mrs.
Someplace where I can see you.
Okay.
And where the reporter can watch your mouth and listen to you.
I don't need a podium. Is it okay if I stand right here?
Sure.
Okay, thank you. Before you sit down, would you raise your right hand, please? Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you are about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Go ahead and have a seat, please.
Let me start by saying welcome, Mrs. McCarthy.
Oh, thank you.
Mrs. McCarthy, can you please state your full name for the record and spell your last name?
My name is Margaret McCarthy. That is McCarthy.
And what is your address, ma'am?
30 Cachico Ave in East Rochester.
Are you presently employed?
I'm retired.
And what was your occupation when you were working?
I was a full-time office manager / bookkeeper.
And do you still do some of that from time to time?
I have, yes, an occasional part-time job doing that, and also I volunteer as the church treasurer.
And how long have you lived in East Rochester?
Since 1981.
Where do you obtain your medical care? From which provider?
I am cared for by Frisbie Hospital and their associated doctors.
And do you have a particular physician that you use as a primary care physician?
My primary care physician is Dr. Geller.
And which physician, which office is Dr. Geller associated with?
Rochester Internal Medicine.
And that's in Rochester proper?
That's in Rochester.
Okay. Now, how long have you had those physicians, or that physician in particular?
At least 15 years.
With Dr. Geller?
Yes,
Okay, so you have had a clinical relationship with Dr. Geller for 15 years?
correct.
Do you feel like you have a strong relationship with this physician?
Yes, I do.
Is he familiar with your medical history and your healthcare needs and you as a person?
Yes,
And do you have the kind of relationship with this doctor that allows you to communicate honestly about your healthcare?
absolutely.
Have you always been insured by Anthem?
In the past, I've been insured by employer-provided plans. The bulk of those were with Anthem. I was also covered by COBRA plans, which were through Anthem, and more recently covered by Anthem individual plans,
So you're an Anthem lifer then?
pretty much.
When did you start going on to Anthem's individual plans?
2011.
Was that at the time that you retired, or at the time your COBRA ran out? After
That was at the time that the COBRA plan ran out.
In terms of your insurance and getting it from Anthem, do you approach Anthem directly, or do you get it through an agent?
I go through an agent in Rochester.
And when did you first hear about the so-called narrow network that's under discussion today?
I read about it in the news in early September.
Of 2013?
2013, correct.
And did you have concerns at that time about the scope of the network?
I was very concerned, and I immediately called Anthem and tried to establish if this was going to apply to my policy, and eventually received a response that at this time it didn't apply to me.
And was that a verbal response, an oral response?
Yes, it was.
Did you talk with a customer service agent or something
Yes,
like that?
I talked with either 3 or 4 customer service agents to try to get one that could actually answer the question.
But finally you did.
I did.
And the answer was that it doesn't apply to you, is that right?
It doesn't apply to me at this time.
Okay. And that wasn't your agent, that was an actual Anthem employee that you spoke with?
That was correct.
And approximately when was that?
I believe, I'd have to double check my notes, but I think that was around September 16th.
So mid-September.
Mhm.
And actually, before we get any further into this, what was it about the narrow network that actually concerned you?
The fact that it didn't include my local hospital, that I would have to travel outside of my community to obtain medical coverage.
Did it concern you that you would have to switch physicians if you were on the exchange plan?
Yes, because as a woman, I don't have just one physician. I have a primary care physician. I also have a gynecologist, and I also go for blood work and testing all through Frisbie affiliated providers.
And so after this conversation with Anthem's customer service, I think you said you believe, based upon their representation, that the change in the networks wouldn't apply to you. Is that right?
That's correct.
And then did you find out after that in fact your policy, it would end up affecting you in some fashion?
Yes, in October I received a letter from Anthem that when my current policy expired, it would no longer be available, and the policies available to me would use that narrow network.
Through the exchange, is that right?
Yes, through the exchange.
And what did you do at that point to investigate what the ramifications of that would be for you, that change? Did you look into what it might cost you to access the new network under a new policy?
I did. I looked into the plans that were on the exchange. Actually, I did not go, let me rephrase that. Anthem has something called changemypolicy.com that I went to, and I looked at the various Anthem plans that were available because I knew that those were the only ones that were on the exchange.
And what did you discover when you looked at those plans?
I discovered that all of those plans were more expensive than what I was currently paying, and none of them would let me go to my current providers.
What about the subsidy, Mrs. McCarthy? You're aware that subsidy, the ACA provides a subsidy for those individuals who qualify, who purchase their policies on the exchange?
Yes, and the subsidy would allow me to save approximately $3,000.
How did you determine?
Off the annual price.
And how did you determine the cost of that subsidy, or the discount that you would be getting through that subsidy?
I used my 2013 income.
2013?
I'm sorry, 2012 income. And went on, there are a number of websites that allow you to do a subsidy calculation, and they all come out to amazingly pretty much the same.
Okay. And that was what, $2,800, $3,000?
Yes, somewhere in that range.
And that was over 12 months?
Yes.
Okay. And did the exchange available plan include your physicians?
No. And most of the exchange available plans had an increased deductible as well.
And again, what was the date of that letter that you received from Anthem?
I believe that was October 9th.
Okay. And then how long thereafter did it take you to determine how the plan would materially affect you?
Not very long.
Okay. After that, did you receive any communication from Anthem extending your plan, your current health plan?
Yes, I received an offer from Anthem to do basically an early renewal, if you will, of my policy at increased cost of what I was paying, and it still did not include any of my current providers.
Okay, and then at some point were you able to extend your present policy? When does your current health care policy expire?
My current health care policy expires August 1st of 2014.
Okay, but as of October 9th, 2013, you believed that it was going to be canceled at some other time, is that correct?
Jim, it's a leading question.
When you received the letter canceling your or notifying you of a policy cancellation or change on October 9th, 2013, when was your policy supposed to stop functioning for you?
It still had the same, if I did nothing, it would still have the same expiration date, or I could go on the exchange and opt into a new policy at any time.
Okay.
Or that would start January 1st.
Okay. So I think you just said that in any event, your policy expires August 1st of 2014.
That's correct.
So this summer, you're going to need a new policy.
That's right.
And what are your options? Have you looked into that?
My options as they stand right now is that I can do nothing and Anthem will renew, Anthem will substitute another policy that is substantially more expensive. It's about 38% increase that I think, because it's not clear from the letter I just received in the past week or so, I think will allow me to access my current doctors. Or I can get an exchange plan that again costs me more money that won't let me see any of my doctors.
But you would get a subsidy for that plan.
I might be able to get a subsidy for any plan that I purchase on the exchange.
Are you hoping there are other options for you by the time your policy runs out?
I was hoping that there would be other carriers available by August of 2014. It doesn't appear that that's going to happen until January, so that's going to leave me with 5 months of I don't know what to do.
Okay. So just to sum up, Mrs. McCarthy, how has the omission of Frisbie and its affiliated providers affected you in Stratford County?
It's made me very anxious because my choice is a policy that I can afford or a policy that I can't afford that will let me see my doctors.
That's all that I have, actually.
Good morning, Mrs. McCarthy.
Good morning.
My name is Richard McCaffrey, and I'm going to make an effort to keep my voice up so that the court reporter can hear me, but please don't feel that I'm yelling at you if I start to raise my voice, okay? 'Cause
Okay.
that's not my intention. Over the last several months, you've signed a couple of affidavits in connection with the matter that brings us here today, right?
That's correct.
And one of those affidavits was signed on December 3rd of 2013. Does that sound about right?
That sounds about right, yep.
I'm putting in front of you, ma'am, what has been marked as NHID Exhibit C. Commissioner, this is in Volume 3, and the department has continuously paginated our documents. So on each exhibit, the exhibit number appears in the lower left-hand corner, or exhibit letter, and the page number is in the lower right-hand corner. So what you're looking at, Mrs. McCarthy, right, you can see where it says NHID Exhibit C in the lower left,
Yes,
and then page 218 in the lower right-hand corner, right?
yes.
And if you take a look at the second page of that, please, it's a two-page affidavit, first of all, right?
Yes,
And on the second page, we see your signature.
that's correct.
And do you actually recall signing this affidavit?
I do.
Where were you when you signed it?
I was at my home.
And if you go to the first page of the affidavit, please.
I'm sorry, I retract that. This is notarized. I was at a local postal express office that has a notary public.
So you went before a notary public
Yes.
in an office, but over in Rochester?
Yes, in Rochester.
Okay. So again, if you would turn to the first page of the affidavit, which again is at page 218 of the exhibit, and you see paragraph 5?
Yes,
And you stated there that, and I'm quoting, "My current annual income levels qualify me for $2,897 subsidy on the marketplace."
Correct.
I read that correctly, right?
Mhm.
And this is what you were testifying to a moment ago, I guess, when you said that you went out into a number of websites and they had these, what they call them, calculators.
subsidy calculators.
And how
correct.
many of those subsidy calculators did you run your income through?
I think I've done it on 2 or 3 different ones.
Was one of them, for example, at the Kaiser Family Foundation?
Possibly, and I did one with, I think it was Intuit.
But the websites that you looked at, is it fair to say that they were not operated by the United States Department of Health and Human Services?
That's correct.
They weren't operated by the New Hampshire Insurance Department.
That's correct.
Was there any point, ma'am, between October 1st of 2013 and March 31st of 2014 when you actually applied for health insurance through the federally facilitated exchange?
No,
So you never went into healthcare.org at any time during that
No.
period and applied? No?
no.
If we return again to the affidavit of paragraph 6, again at page 218, you see that? You looking at it, ma'am?
Yes,
And you stated, and I'm quoting, "I do not yet know whether the President's recent relaxation of policies regarding policy cancellation will have any effect on whether I can continue using, or I can continue my existing coverage. But even if I can, my costs will far exceed those I would expect to pay on a marketplace available given policy, or on the marketplace available given marketplace available subsidies."
Mhm.
I tried to
Correct.
read that as best I could. Got through it more or less?
yes.
Okay. Now, did you actually write that paragraph?
No, I did not.
Who did write that?
My attorneys wrote that.
And when you signed the affidavit, though, you swore that the information in the affidavit was true and complete to the best of your ability, right?
That's correct.
All right. And to the best of your ability, was that information true?
Yes,
Okay. Now, if you did not actually apply for an insurance policy through the federally facilitated marketplace, you do not know exactly how much it would have cost you to buy health insurance through that marketplace. Doesn't that have to be true?
Are you saying that the policies that are shown on that changemypolicy.com that Anthem refers me to are not the same as what's listed on the marketplace?
Well, you've testified that you didn't apply through the marketplace, right?
Correct.
And you've also testified that you're entitled to a subsidy.
Correct.
Did Anthem, the subsidy calculators that you used, you thought one was maybe by Intuit, and you thought perhaps the other you weren't sure was a Kaiser Family Foundation calculator?
Yes, it was similar to one of those, yes.
Neither of those are associated or affiliated with Anthem Blue Cross Blue Shield, right?
To my knowledge, that's correct.
All right, so if you figure in the subsidy, I mean, to determine what the cost of it, what I'm asking you is, it's simple. To determine what you were going to pay for a policy, you know, what the final cost to you was, you know, through the exchange, you had to apply for a policy through the exchange to determine that cost, did you not?
I don't believe that's true. If the information that Anthem provided was accurate, the pricing would be the same whether I saw it on their site or on the federal site.
Well, that's the pricing without the subsidy that you referred to.
So you take the pricing and you subtract the subsidy.
But the only way to
It's pretty-
determine what your subsidy actually was to apply through the federal website, correct?
Only if all the subsidy calculators are wrong.
Well, those subsidy calculators contain within them, do they not, disclaimers that these are just guesstimates?
They may. I'd have to take your word for it, they may.
There was nothing that prevented you from applying for coverage through the marketplace, was there?
No,
So you chose not to apply for coverage through the marketplace.
that's correct.
You've testified when Mr. Eggleton was asking you questions that you have a health insurance right now for the moment, right?
Yes,
And your policy is issued by Anthem.
correct.
And it sounds like you've been an Anthem customer for a long time, that's fair to say?
Yes,
And the policy you have right now allows you to use Frisbie Memorial Hospital and the doctors that Frisbie contracts with, right?
correct.
You indicated that your primary care physician is a Dr. Geller at Rochester Internal.
Yes,
Is that Alexander Geller?
yes,
And Dr. Geller has been your primary care physician, or PCP as is known, you said, for about 15 years.
I believe so, yes.
Which means that prior to 15 years ago, you had a different PCP?
Yes.
Who was your doctor back then?
I honestly don't recall. I may not have actually had, I may have been using my gynecologist as a PCP back then, I don't recall.
Well, why would you have stopped using your gynecologist as a PCP 15 years ago?
Because I had other issues that needed to be dealt with by other than a gynecologist.
Do you know for sure that you did not have a primary care physician 15 years ago?
Do not recall.
Now, you've testified that your understanding is that your current Anthem plan expires on August 1st of 2014, this year, right?
Correct.
Now, do you recall telling a reporter, I think from Foster's, that even if you could renew your current policy with Anthem, that you would not do so because there is no product that Anthem offers that you're interested in? Do you recall making that statement?
I do.
So you're done with Anthem?
If I have to pay 40% more than what I'm paying now to get the same product, yes, I'm done with Anthem, and I'm looking for more alternatives.
Now, you understand that Anthem, your present company, is also the only insurance company that actually made the decision to offer policies through this federally facilitated exchange. You know that, right?
Yes, I do.
And you're aware that next year there are additional companies.
Yes, I am.
You referenced that in your testimony when Mr. Eggleton was asking you questions. One of those companies is Harvard Pilgrim, right?
I believe so.
And have you read in the newspapers that Frisbie has contracted with Harvard Pilgrim?
I believe I have seen that, yes.
And are you aware that the other company coming in is, that we know right now, is Minuteman?
Yes.
Have you had any discussions with your former co-petitioner, Mr. Felger, who is sitting back here, about whether or not his hospital is contracted with Minuteman?
No, I have not.
So you don't know whether Minuteman's going to be contracting in the exchange with Frisbie?
No, I do not, but I believe they've stated that they're going to have a broad network in the newspapers.
Yes. Minuteman has stated that in the newspapers that they would like to contract with all 26 New Hampshire hospitals, right?
I think that's accurate.
But there'll be at least one, in a few months, there'll be at least one hospital over in Stratford County that will include Frisbie and its providers in its federally facilitated marketplace network, right?
Yes.
Commissioner, I wanted, if I may, use a map of Stratford County. James, what's this? We have the podium right behind you, James. I don't want to be defending a personal injury case. And, you know, I'll invite counsel, of course, to, Mr. Durham.
Attorney McCaffrey, if you would, as you're going
Yes.
through it, please point back to its relevance.
Yep, I will. Commissioner, may I ask Mrs. McCarthy to join me at the map? And would you mind, ma'am?
Sure.
Little field trip.
Okay.
One more question for you. Is this exhibit contained in smaller form?
I do not have it in smaller form. What I would, I do not. And what I would propose doing is introducing this, that this is part of the record. These maps I can, subsequent, if you'd like to order it, these are furnished by DOT, and I can acquire additional
It
copies.
doesn't have to be in, in that size. It can be something smaller that we can all refer to.
Okay. Okay, now,
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
I think that it's important so that it's clear for the transcript that this be marked in some way.
Right.
So that the transcript is clear that it's going to refer to a marking, even if there are subsequent smaller ones.
right, this has been marked in the lower left-hand corner. That's a great point, Michael, thank you. As NHID Exhibit H.
And it's a full exhibit.
It's a full exhibit. Now, first, where do you live?
I live in this area right here. The street is actually not marked, but
I brought a magnifying glass, so I'm looking at, is this, you want to look at this with me?
yeah, it's the.
Is it right in, where on that line? Why don't you?
One moment, one at a time, please.
I'm sorry, Susan.
That's okay.
Sure, I believe it is right, my house is right here.
That's going to be within,
I can do that.
beautiful. And Frisbie Hospital, as I understand it, is.
Can we note that she's placed a red pin on her?
Oh, thank you, yes. Yeah. There's a red pin indicating where the home of Mrs. McCarthy. Now, Frisbie is located at approximately the intersection of Route 108 and Whitehall Road, is that right?
That's correct.
And would this be about the spot, that little triangle?
Yes.
And we've put in a second red pin at the intersection of Whitehall and 108, indicating where Frisbie Memorial Hospital is located. Now, Where's Dr. Geller's office?
I believe it's, well, let's see. I believe it's down in this area, it's across from the airport.
It's by the airport?
It may be in this section right here. That's it, that's the airport. My gynecologist is right in with the hospital complex. And Dr. Geller's just a little bit further
So,
down
okay,
the
so,
street.
so where the red dot where Frisbie Hospital is, that's where your gynecologist would be?
Yes.
Okay, and your lab services are also in the hospital?
Actually, I go to lab services that are even closer. They are on Portland Ave right here, right next to the Dynasty Restaurant.
Why don't you just go ahead and put that pen where you're, and give us the street address, so it's an approximate, intersection where you're placing that?
Yeah, I believe it's fairly close to the corner of Portland Ave and Nutter Street. So I don't even have to drive to the hospital to get my blood work done.
And Dr. Geller, again, you indicated down here, does this look about right on this map? If you see Innovation Drive, we put that about there.
Yes.
Okay, so you placed 4 red pins, and one indicating your home, another where your gynecologist is located, a third where Frisbie Hospital is.
That's where the lab is located.
The lab, I beg your pardon, the lab, ma'am, thank
Yes,
you.
Frisbie and the gynecologist.
And your Frisbie and the gynecologist at one pin, and then in the most southern pin is where your primary care physician is.
Correct.
Now, you know where Wentworth Douglas Hospital is,
I
right?
do.
Okay, and if I represent to you that the blue pin on this map is Wentworth Douglas Hospital, that looks to be about right?
Yes, that looks about right.
All right, and I'm going to represent to you, and we have spreadsheets that are already full exhibits that confirm this, that the green pins indicate 11 locations with a capacity of 54 open primary, or 11 locations with 54 open primary care practices, okay?
Okay.
So you can see the scale of the map is 1 inch to the mile, right?
Yep.
So, if we look at where, this is as the crow flies, but, your house as the crow flies is 11 miles from Wentworth Douglas, right?
That's about right, yeah.
Yep, and you're about 3.5.
Hard to travel in a car that way, though.
It is, I know it, you need a helicopter. We indicate that there is actually a PCP, again, as the crow flies, located 4 miles from your home, right? If the green pin is a PCP.
If it is, yeah.
Yeah. And that's a little closer than, as a crow flies, as your own primary care physician, right? It's about 4.5 miles away.
Yeah.
So, you would agree that, looking at the furthest distance, I won't go through each of these pins, but the furthest distance for any of these providers from your house is about 17 miles, which would not meet the network adequacy standard for you, but you would agree that all the remaining pins here are within, I take that back, I guess there are 2 on the southern. So out of the 11 pins, there are 9 provider locations that are within the 15-mile requirement of where your home is located.
That's
based
correct.
on my representation that these are primary care physicians. Okay, I have nothing further, Mrs. McCarthy, thank you.
You're welcome.
Before we get into your query, Mike, can we, when we get the reduced copy of this exhibit, have the department mark the names and the identities of the providers that were?
We'd be happy to do that. We will probably do it with, we'll use green, well, I'll leave it to Carolyn, but it'll be represented in similar colors and, you want this?
Let me just, for the record, indicate that I do accept this under the assumption that the markings are accurate.
I have no further questions for Mrs. McCarthy.
Does Attorney Durham have any follow-ups?
I just have a few. Just let Mr. McCaffrey remove his materials.
Good morning.
I just have a few follow-up questions for you based on what you were asked of. And I just want to make sure I understand that all of your providers that you see are in the Rochester area?
Yes.
And we have in evidence the specific information about your current Anthem plan, but I think you testified earlier, I want to verify that that coverage has been in place since August of 2011?
Yes.
Okay, I think it started August 1st of 2011, that's why your renewal date is in August as well?
Right. We had to start it when the COBRA coverage ran out.
Okay, and your current coverage has remained in effect since August of 2011, right up to the present time, without any changes, correct?
That's correct. There was a substantial premium increase when I turned 60.
My question was about the coverage.
Okay, yes, the coverage.
Okay. And so you've been able to secure the health care services that you have needed during that time without any difficulty, and there's been coverage, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So you're not making any claim that you've been denied access to health care coverage during this period from 2011 up until the present, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And you're not in any way claiming that Anthem has violated its contract with you during that same time period, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. In fact, you're not making any claim that Anthem violated any provider agreements or contracts it had with Frisbie Hospital or any of Frisbie's physicians, correct?
I would not have knowledge of that.
Okay. So you're not making that claim?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, you confirmed that you have not applied for any coverage at any time through the New Hampshire exchange, is that right?
That's correct.
Have you applied for coverage with any other insurer off the exchange since 2011, right up until the present time?
I have not applied. I have asked my insurance agent for quotes from other insurance. I believe there's a couple that are not on the exchange that also offer insurance in New Hampshire.
Right, but just to confirm, you haven't applied for any insurance during that time frame, correct?
Correct.
And one of the other carriers, am I right, that is writing individual policies that in fact would include a broad network and include the Frisbie providers, is Assurant?
That name does ring a bell.
Okay. So during this period of time that we're talking about, right up until the current time, you have an option to apply for coverage with Assurant that would allow you to continue with any of your providers you're seeing now in the Rochester area, correct?
That's correct.
And that's been a choice you've made, that you don't want to do that, correct? Because you haven't applied for that type of insurance.
I haven't applied for that.
Okay.
But that type of insurance also would not offer a subsidy.
I'm not asking
Sorry.
you that question. I'm simply confirming that there is another insurer in the marketplace off the exchange that offers the coverage that would allow you to continue with your providers. And you've chosen, for whatever reason, not to do that, correct?
Yes.
I want to try to clarify with you, because I'm not sure I understand the sequence of the renewals. You agree that before December 1st, 2013, you had the option of renewing your current policy with Anthem, correct?
Yes, I think they called it a, I can't recall the term, but it was an,
You had an early opportunity to renew
Yeah,
that
it was an
policy.
early renewal that would have extended my coverage until December 1st, as I recall the explanation.
Of 2013.
Of 2014.
Excuse me, 2014. Okay. And so when you testified earlier, there would be this 5-month gap that you don't know what you do about. In fact, if you had chosen to extend your coverage with Anthem, which you've indicated you were happy with and you've been able to see the doctors you want, that renewal, if you had chosen to do that, would have extended your coverage to December 1st.
Right. So I would have had a 1-month gap and higher rates.
A 1-month gap to what you've described as an opportunity to seek coverage on the exchange effective January 1st, 2015 with either Harvard or Minuteman, or perhaps by then there's other options as well, correct?
Correct.
Now you mentioned a lab, the lab that you go to. Do you know whether that lab has an association or a contract with Wentworth Douglas Hospital?
I do not know.
Is that something you ever investigated to see if you had gone on the exchange and had gotten coverage, you could still receive lab services at the same location through Wentworth Douglas Hospital? Did you ever look into that?
No, I did not.
Do you know if there are any labs that are even closer to your home than where you go now that are affiliated with Wentworth Douglas Hospital?
I'm not aware of any.
That's not something you looked into?
No.
And I want to just make sure that the record is clear, because there was back and forth with Mr. McCaffrey. As of today, right up until today, you have never applied for coverage on the exchange, nor have you officially applied for a federal subsidy to help you with your policy. Is
That is correct.
Now, you mentioned additional communications that you've received from Anthem. Do you recall that, in fact, you've had another opportunity to extend your coverage other than the offer that you had early in 2013?
I'm not recalling one other than there was the letter of October 9th, and then there was a communication in November about the early renewal. And then I got one just this past week about what will happen when my current policy expires.
Okay. But the renewal that we talked about that you had the opportunity to take advantage of would have kept your current existing coverage in place, I think, through, you said, through December 1st of 2014.
Yes, at a higher rate.
Now, so as you sit here today, you don't recall that you had another opportunity to renew your coverage that would have extended it from December 1st, 2014 through the end of the year, December 31st, 2014?
No, I don't recall that.
And just so the record's good, you don't remember that one way or another, is that correct?
No.
That's correct?
Yes, that's correct. I do not remember it,
Okay.
one way or the other.
All right. Mr. McCaffrey showed you your April 15th, 2014 affidavit, or was it the December one that you looked at?
I believe we were looking at the December one.
Okay. May I have that exhibit? I think it's Anthem's 2.
Let's see.
It's actually 2. Here's the
yeah,
one I
yeah.
was
Oh,
looking at.
okay.
Yeah. Thank you. Let me just show you, if I might. May I approach? Okay, so I'm going to show you Anthem's exhibit number 2, which also is the department's, as you pointed out, exhibit D. And do you recognize that as your affidavit that you signed?
Yes, I do.
Okay, and as you testify here this morning, do you continue to assert that it is accurate and true?
Yes, I do.
And just to verify, that is your signature at the bottom of the affidavit?
Yes, it is.
Thanks. I just have and let me just ask you finally, are you aware, putting aside any communications that you may or may not have received from Anthem, are you aware from things in the media and things that you've learned that, in fact, had you renewed your current policy before December 1st of 2013, which you've indicated you had that opportunity, that if you had exercised that option, that now you would have had an opportunity to actually extend that policy beyond December 1st, 2014. Are you aware that that option exists, would have